It's the Black Real Estate Dialogue. Tune in. Tune in. Tune in. Tune in.
We just dove right in. My husband and I bought a duplex. We ran the most basic numbers you could ever imagine. Thankfully, it was actually a good deal. We didn't really know that. And once we saw how much money we could make, I was like, oh, we need to do this again. So we did it again and again. We ended up house hacking that house hack. So we bought a duplex. We didn't house hack that duplex. We bought a fourplex. We house hacked that. That house hack really set us up to be able to leave our government jobs. So we retired from the 9 to 5 life. I was 32 at the time. And our plan was to be nomads and travel the world for about a year, but we ended up being pregnant. And so we were like, okay, change of plans. And we moved to San Antonio, Texas to be closer to family. But that's like the really short Cliff Note version of like our real estate story.
Definitely. And something that I like to discuss more about that is, a lot of people, it seems like for a lot of us, it's out of reach. Even the thought that we could, one, buy a property, or two, build our portfolio to a point where it can help us move on to other things, like write books and work on our businesses and things of that nature. So can you talk about just, when you realized that you two were on that track and it's something that was possible, like what was that like?
Man, once we realized that like buying a rental property was something we could do, it's like, why didn't anybody tell us this? Why is this something that our families weren't talking about and encouraging us to do? And I think our generation, we were like fit into this, like we had to fit into a box, go to school, get a good job, work. Like that was the American dream. Our generation now is shifting that. So I feel like for our kids, they're going to feel differently about it, right? They're going to have different options. But anyway, once we got that first rental property, we had a tenant in one side already. We inherited a tenant. The other side was empty. By a complete desperation, we ended up putting the property on Airbnb. We made, I think, $4,000 in a month. And we're like, what? We could replace our salaries. That was only on one side of the duplex. So this is Washington, D.C. So it's a huge tourist city. So you have to keep that in mind. When I'm talking numbers, DC numbers ain't going to be like Detroit numbers, and it ain't going to be like Cleveland numbers. Like it's really real in DC, right? Yeah. So, and I had always been trying to leave my job. I always hated my job. This is not 9 to 5 bashing for anyone listening. If you love your job, that is a blessing. I did not. And I was always side hustling, but side hustling never got me free because there's only so much time in the day, right? I was always still exchanging time for money. When I saw that money from the rental property, I'm like, oh, I'm ready to go now. Like I want to leave. Yeah. And so we just decided to like really scale and make the moves to leave. But I think that was it for us, seeing that we could replace our salary so easily, like replace our monthly income so easily.
Definitely. And how did it feel like just that last day walking out? Like just knowing that, we can move on. I can move on to the next chapter of my life and we can just do other things. Like what did that feel like? And was it hard to stay motivated in the last couple of weeks?
It was, okay, well, I'm gonna answer your first question first. I can't remember if the last time we talked, was I still working or not? Probably not. I probably had just left.
Yeah.
But we actually probably could have left about 3 years before we did. And in some moments it was frustrating because I was really ready to go. My husband's very patient. He's like, no, let's wait. Because as you know, like with real estate, there's ups and downs. There's there's a vacancy, there's turnover, there's like repairs and stuff like that. So he's like, let's make sure we really have enough savings and we really know what we're doing so that when we do leave, we're not like strapped for cash and stuff like that. And so there were days at work when it felt good to know that like, I don't have to be here. Like I'm here and y'all giving me a lot of crap today, but I could walk out right now. Like just to have that power felt really good. And then I think, what was the other question? How did it feel to leave? And then
so it was like the last day. Like how did that feel?
Oh yeah, it was crazy because I put in my 2 weeks notice actually the day before the government shut down. Remember that government shut down? And I think it was like 2009, I think it happened in 2018, and then
Mhm.
it carried in. Anyway, it was like 30 days the government was shut down. I didn't know it was going to happen. And I put my 2 weeks notice in, and the government ended up being shut down. So it didn't get processed. And so we were literally just like at home.
Wow.
And so it got processed like once the government opened back up. And then I actually, that was the beginning of 2019. So I actually left in February of 2019 after that long government shutdown. It was crazy. So I got a few extra weeks of paycheck that I wasn't expecting because they had to back pay us.
Right. Definitely. It's crazy. So how's it been since then? Since 2019? Like how's real estate been for you? Have you changed anything that you've done? Have you noticed any changes in the markets where you invest back east? What's that been like?
Yeah, the pandemic was really tough for us because we moved to San Antonio literally a couple of months before the pandemic hit. And we had, of course, no idea, like nobody did.
Mm-hmm.
We thought that we'd be able to, our plan was really to like go back and forth freely between here and DC and like check on our properties and stuff. My husband's a very like hands-on kind of person. We self-manage. So, but when we had a small baby, like a brand new baby, it didn't feel safe to travel. And so we went like almost a year without even laying eyes on our properties, which is not normal for us. And we ended up selling 2 properties, which honestly, like at first, I didn't really want to talk about it. This is like the first time I'm actually talking about it because I felt like I had to uphold this idea of like never sell, like this and that, like you shouldn't sell. But it was just the right thing for us because we weren't able to like get there as much as we could. Those 2 properties were a little more high maintenance. And it was a seller's market, and we got paid very well for them.
I'm sure.
It was crazy.
Are you looking for a community of like-minded individuals and access to experts in real estate?
Yeah.
Are you interested in real estate but need more support and guidance?
You know who it is?
The Black Real Estate Dialogue presents the Real Estate Investing Community. No matter how much or how little real estate experience you have, we've created a community for you because your perspective is important. All right, tell me, where's the #1 place where you can do Q&A with experienced guest speakers 2 times per month? How about unlimited access to past guest speakers' recordings? What about a private Slack channel to engage in daily discussion with everybody in the community to share resources and support each other? Head on over to blackrealestatedialogue.com. That's blackrealestatedialogue.com. It's the real estate investing community presented by the Black Real Estate Dialogue. Come join us today.
Talk to us about diversified lending solution. I know you started, I believe, in 2020. I'm very interested in what led to starting the company, and also like what led to the leap from your previous job to just, saying, you know what, I'm gonna go out on my own and help out people in this way.
Sure. So great question. So prior to 2020, I was very fortunate that I got to work for some really large organizations that were involved in the financings of other really large organizations. And so the good thing about that is that you learn a lot. You're almost drinking from a fire hose because there's so many factors involved, and you really do become a subject matter expert. But one of the things that always frustrated me very early on in my career was that once you walked out of the headquarters of your office and you were sitting with your friends and trying to figure out, okay, how do we build our little mini empire? Because we see all these other successful operators. How do you get there? You have to start somewhere. It always was a challenge of arranging the financing, right? And we kind of walked in naively very early on saying, hey, we're smart. We went to good schools. We can go out and we can do deals on our own, and banks and other financial institutions will race to do business with us. And of course, that was not the case. And so we had to get creative, and we tried, you had to find ways, a lot of times bootstrap deals or do very small deals and claw your way up. And all through that process, while both my partner and I were working for these larger companies, we said, this is really unfortunate, right? How do you bridge the gap between becoming that super successful company and the one that's starting out today or is kind of rounded first base but hasn't gotten there yet? And you really don't see a lot of focus on that, at least I don't, in the market. It's either we're going to serve the companies once you figured it all out, basically, and then everything else becomes a lot more choppy and vague and hard to navigate from there. So the people who figure it out do incredibly well, and everyone else is kind of looking up saying, I wish I knew how to get there. So fast forward to the pandemic, and guess what? Even people that were reasonably far on their journeys said to themselves, hey, what the heck is going on? The market is changing every day. The market is unpredictable in a way that no one has been able to really use as a base case. So a lot of folks that took it for granted in a good market with low interest rates, they could just go out and get a loan and buy their property, were suddenly scrambled. And so we saw an opportunity that said, listen, there is a whole cohort of folks that can't just pick up, call their banker who they've been working with the last 10 years, who has solutions on deck for them. And they're panicking and they don't really know what to do and what to think about. And fortunately, we have relationships and we have experience and we have the visibility to what's happening on a day-to-day basis in the markets, that we could provide relief to that business that is not necessarily as big of a focus to the larger advisors in the market. And that was really the inception of Diversified Lending Solutions.
Got it. So it just sounded like, what was happening in the world, some solutions that you had in mind, and just this previous desire you had to get into. But it just seems like a lot of things happen at the same time. And, this was the right time to make the leap.
It dovetailed very well. I again wish that it was a part of some master plan. But it just so happened that we were far enough along in our journey and our understanding, and the market conditions were accommodative enough that those two things aligned. And we said, wow, now we can actually take everything that we have as far as resources and accumulated both on the institutional side, but also having now been small investors ourselves. Like through that whole process, we were either doing our own deals on the side while we had jobs or investing in deals on the side. So we got to see those two worlds that were like parallel tracks, but they hardly ever connect, and say, listen, we can find a way to bridge that a little bit closer and help people, build wealth in the process.
Definitely. That's so interesting that you mentioned, like, at work, right? Like seeing what it looks like on a super big scale, right? With these huge deals, and then also doing your own thing on the side as well. And I'm sure like what you learned at work helped with those deals outside. Do you mind talking to us a bit more about what some of the things you did outside and on the side prior to the inception of the company, and how that helped you learn?
Sure. So one of the biggest differences I'll say in the learning is that there's an academic learning that comes from school. There's an experiential learning that comes from working at a large institution. Okay, this is how things are done. This is what professionalism looks like. And then when you're on the ground doing it yourself, there's that entrepreneurial component that you're learning, and all those little pieces to the puzzle that maybe got taken care of before you even had to think of them when you were working at a large company. So for instance, my partner launched what I would call at the time, it was a short-term rental business. He was very early on the Airbnb kind of trade. And at the time, people thought he was a little bit zany, and he'd go out and he was buying SFRs and townhomes and he was renting them out. There was no kind of SFR, fix and flip, Airbnb financing at that time. He was literally finding ways to use hard money and so on and so forth. And the amount of war stories that accumulated over that time in terms of, horror situations with tenants and how you pre-screen a tenant properly and how you actually manage a renovation project. Things that if you were working at a large company, you just kind of phone in and they just get done. In this case, the good thing is that we both had to involve ourselves in every aspect at various points of a project, not because we necessarily even wanted to, but because that was just the necessity of the deal itself. So in my case, my preference, he was extremely hands-on. I was more of a passive investor, but in slightly larger projects. Mm-hmm. So in my case, when you're screening, let's say a multifamily operator, and you're saying, hey, I have a value add project and I'm raising money. In my case, I found myself being kind of the spokesperson of the investment group in many cases, because folks were coming to deals with no real estate experience. Said, oh, it's housing, it makes sense, I like it, it's in a market I want to invest in. And then I kind of raised my hand and said, wait, and start asking questions that, I'm sure the operator wasn't always thrilled that I was a loud voice in the room. But in that respect, it educated the other investors. And in the process, I still got the opportunity to learn, because it was almost like I was being a portfolio manager of my own book.
Hi everyone, Sam here from the Black Real Estate Dialogue. Make sure to hit that notification bell and that subscribe button, and to visit us at blackrealestatedialogue.com.